Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to The Curious Case. Tell me, do village fairs still make you smile, or do they make you uneasy? The smell of sweet apples, the chatter, the laughter so harmless on the surface. Share your thoughts below. I always read them. Now, let's step into street. Mary Mead, where one coin stall hides more than luck. By evening, one man will not go home. The brass band played near the green. Notes off-key but cheerful. Miss Marple walked beside Lady Bantry. The air smelled of fried apples and sugar. Children ran past with ribbons and paper flags. It was market day in Street Mary Mead. Lady Bantry adjusted her hat. "Crowded this year," she said. "Everyone seems in fine spirits." Marple nodded. Her eyes moved from face to face. Some smiled too easily. Some avoided looking at her at all. At the far end, the coin stalls were busiest. Men tossed pennies, laughed, cursed softly when they missed. Mr. Kenton stood behind one of them, tall, pressed suit, hair brushed with oil. The village moneylender, always polite, always smiling. No one liked him, but everyone spoke to him. He made it difficult not to. "Ah, Mr. Kenton," Lady Bantry said as they passed. "New watch?" He lifted his wrist with a grin. "Silver, my lady. A gift to myself, for good business." The chain caught the light. Thick, heavy, too grand for his modest coat. Marple's gaze lingered. The clasp didn't match, cheap tin replacing what had been gold. She noticed the edge bent slightly, the join rough. Work of a hurried hand. Lady Bantry smiled politely. "Still lending money to half the village?" He laughed. "They keep me busy. And careful." The way he said careful held weight. He pocketed a note someone handed him and winked. Even the poor must learn to pay. A nearby farmer scowled but said nothing. Kenton's smile stayed fixed. Marple watched him fold his handkerchief. Slow, neat, deliberate, every motion measured. He liked control, that much was clear. And yet she saw the frayed cuff beneath his sleeve. The man who lent money did not mend his own clothes well. Small contradiction. She stored it quietly. "Come, Jane," Lady Bantry said. "The jam competition awaits." They moved on. Behind them, Kenton laughed again. It didn't sound kind. At the bakery stall, the talk turned to him. "He's charging double interest now," one woman whispered. "Threatened to take Perkins' shop if he doesn't pay." Another muttered, "You'll see. Someone'll snap one day." Marple didn't interrupt. She only listened. When the band started a new tune, she glanced back. Kenton stood alone now, winding his watch. The silver glinted, but the clasp looked ready to break. She studied it once more. Fine chain, cheap repair, two worlds joined badly together. Odd, she thought, for a man so proud. The clock struck noon. The fair was at its busiest. Children shouted, traders called, coins clinked on wooden tables. The smell of roasted nuts hung in the air. A small breeze lifted paper flags along the green. Then it happened. A sharp cry from the raffle stall. People turned. The band faltered mid-note. Mr. Kenton was on the ground. At first, no one moved. He lay half-hidden behind his booth, one arm outstretched. A cup had spilled near his hand. The tea soaked into the grass, dark and quick. Coins rolled from his tray, catching the sun as they scattered. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, fainted. Dr. Haydock pushed through the crowd. He dropped to one knee beside the fallen man. "Stand back," he said sharply. The crowd obeyed, shifting in silence. Haydock loosened Kenton's collar, pressed two fingers to his neck, then to his wrist. He waited. He frowned. Marple stood a few paces away. Her eyes were steady, her hands still. Lady Bantry clutched her arm. "Jane, is he? Dr. Haydock," looked up. "Gone," he said quietly. The word spread fast. The postmaster said, "Heat stroke. That's what it'll be." Someone nodded. Someone else added, "Always overdoes it, that man. No shade all morning." The crowd wanted explanation. Something ordinary. Something that would let them keep smiling. But Miss Marple didn't look away. She saw the teacup first. It had fallen sideways, but not far. The handle, unbroken. The rim faintly white where liquid had dried. Not dust, not milk. Something else. Powder, maybe. She moved a little closer. Best keep back, Miss Marple, Dr. Haydock warned. Poor chap's had a seizure. She nodded. Her gaze didn't leave the cup. Steam still rose faintly from what was left inside. The smell drifted upward. Almonds. Faint, but distinct. Lady Bantry sniffed. How strange. His tea smells sweet. Marple said nothing. Sweet wasn't the word she'd have chosen. She'd known that smell before. Long ago. Cyanide. Not heat. Not exhaustion. Something deliberate. Dr. Haydock stood and shook his head. Nothing more I can do. The constable was already running for the police post. People murmured. Some cried. Most looked relieved that it wasn't them. Marple's eyes followed the last coin as it rolled and stopped against her shoe. A silver sixpence. Still clean, not yet marked by soil. She picked it up, turned it in her hand. No mark of poison there. But the teacup, yes, that was another matter. She looked around once more. Mrs. Kenton stood at the edge of the crowd, one hand to her throat. Her glove fingertips trembled. When Marple's eyes met hers, she turned away. The brass band began again, softly, uncertainly. People moved off in small groups. Dr. Haydock covered the body with his coat. Miss Marple stayed where she was. Her voice, when she spoke, was low. Not heat, she said. Not at all. The clock struck noon. The brass band stopped mid-note. A cry came from near the raffle stall. Short, sharp, and frightened. Heads turned at once. Mr. Kenton was down. Behind his booth, half hidden by the tablecloth. His cup had fallen, spilling tea down the wooden planks. Coins rolled across the boards and dropped into the grass. One spun on its edge before tipping flat. The air smelled of sugar and sweat. Voices rose, then stopped. Dr. Haydock pushed through the crowd. "Let me by," he said. He dropped his case beside the body. 2 fingers pressed at Kenton's neck. Then, at his wrist. He waited. The crowd leaned closer. "Well?" someone whispered. Dr. Haydock looked up. Gone. That one word silenced everything. Lady Bantry clutched her handbag. "He looked well this morning," she said. "Heart, maybe," another voice said. "Heat stroke," someone else offered. People wanted a reason, something quick, something safe. Miss Marple didn't speak. She was watching the ground. The tea had pooled, near the man's hand, pale brown, clouded white at the rim. Not milk, not dust, something else. She crouched, just a little. No one noticed. The rim of the cup had a faint residue, powder, clinging where the tea had dried. Her eyes moved to Mrs. Kenton. The woman stood near the stall, her gloves still on, her face pale, her lips moving soundlessly. "Doctor." Haydock shook his head again. Nothing to be done. The constable ran for help. Children were led away. The raffle caller packed up his tickets in silence. The crowd began to drift. Marple stayed still. The smell changed as the wind shifted. Faint almonds. Sweet, but wrong. She'd known it before. Once, long ago. Bitter almonds meant cyanide. Cyanide meant intent. Lady Bantry whispered, "Jane, come along." But Marple didn't move, her eyes fixed on the cup, on that rim of white, on the foam that never belonged in tea. She noted the direction of the handle, the stain on the edge where lips had touched. Only one sip taken. Enough. Always enough. Someone muttered, "The poor man. Worked too hard." Another said, "He had enemies, that one." The crowd wanted gossip, now that fear had passed. Miss Marple rose slowly. Her gloves brushed the edge of the table. She left a faint mark in the spilled tea. Dr. Haydock began to cover the body with his coat. The band tried to start again, half-hearted, uneven. Normal life returning too fast. Miss Marple glanced once more at the cup. Her voice was soft, but firm. "Not heat," she said. "Not at all." Miss Marple moved closer, quietly. No one stopped her. The crowd had thinned, but the smell lingered. Faint almonds, sweet at first, then bitter. She knelt beside the booth. The grass was damp from the spilled tea. Her gloved hand steadied on the coin tray. Sticky, faintly sweet to the touch. She drew back her hand. A thin film clung to the glove's fingertip. Sugar, perhaps. Or not. Dr. Haydock was, speaking to the constable, his voice low, professional. Likely heart failure, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. Miss Marple glanced up. Mrs. Kenton stood near the edge of the stall. She held a folded handkerchief, her knuckles white, her lips pressed tight. "Best get her home," Lady Bantry whispered. "She looks faint." Mrs. Kenton didn't move, her eyes fixed on the body, then on the cup, then on the tray where the coins had scattered. Marple saw it clearly. A single coin stuck to the edge, glued by the same faint residue. When the constable bent to pick it up, she flinched, just slightly, then looked away. Marple noticed who stepped back. The baker, Mr. Perkins. He moved behind another stall, pretending to tidy baskets. His face was red, his hands shaking. He didn't look toward the booth again. Curious. He'd been one of Kenton's debtors, she recalled. The constable asked a few questions. Who had seen him last alive? Who had poured the tea? Voices answered, overlapping. Mrs. Kenton said she'd brought it. At 10 minutes to 12. He was thirsty, she said, her voice steady now. Too steady. The kind of calm that takes effort. Marple's eyes drifted back to the cup. It was lying on its side, the inside rim dull, the outside shining clean. No lipstick marks, no sugar grains at the bottom. Mr. Kenton took his tea plain. Everyone knew that. Mrs. Kenton liked hers sweet. Very sweet. Dr. Haydock straightened. "Best move him," he said to the constable. Marple shook her head. "Not yet. Let things stay as they are." He gave her a look, half disapproval, half respect. He knew her well enough not to argue. A faint breeze moved the bunting above them. The flags flapped once, twice, then stilled again. The smell stayed, sharp, unmistakable. Marple brushed the grass with her glove again. The sticky patch had spread. Where tea should have soaked clear, the surface glistened dull, white. She thought of the cup's residue, the sweet scent, the pale streak, too much to be coincidence. Mrs. Kenton dabbed her eyes with her handkerchief. No tears came. She folded it again and again between her fingers. Marple saw the faint grey smear along its edge. Putty? Powder? She couldn't tell yet. The constable asked for names. People gave them quickly. Some too quickly. Mr. Perkins slipped away toward the road. Mrs. Kenton said she felt ill and would go home. Dr. Haydock agreed to escort her. Miss Marple stayed. She looked once more at her glove, still faintly sticky. She turned it in the light. It caught the glimmer of something crystalline, powdered, cold, deliberate. She looked toward the path where Mrs. Kenton had gone. Perhaps it was nothing, she murmured. But she wasn't sure. Inspector Slack arrived within the hour, brisk, focused, boots already muddy from the green. He waved off the constable, stepped to the stall, and took one long look at the body. "Heart failure," he said. No greeting, no hesitation. He wrote something in his small notebook. "Man overworked, too much sun. That's your answer, Doctor." Haydock frowned. "Could be, but it happened suddenly." Slack shrugged. "Sudden is how hearts fail, Doctor." He knelt, turned over the teacup with his pencil. Didn't touch it. Sniffed once. "Tea," he said, and straightened. Miss Marple stood near the edge of the stall, quiet, observing. She didn't speak until he was done writing. Then she said softly, "Do you smell almonds, Inspector?" He turned. "Almonds?" "Yes," she said. "Sweet, slightly bitter underneath." Slack sniffed the air, frowned again. "Can't say I do." He looked at her the way one looks at a child insisting on fairies. "Probably the jam booth behind you." Marple smiled faintly. "Perhaps." Slack looked back at the teacup. "What's that on the rim, Doctor?" "Could be sugar," Haydock said. "Or chalk. Hard to tell." Slack grunted. "Cup's filthy. Not evidence. He drank. He fell. End of story." Marple tilted her head. "Wouldn't heart failure leave some strain on the face?" "The poor man looks surprised." Slack raised an eyebrow. "Bodies often do, Miss Marple. Death's not polite." He shut his notebook. "You've been reading too many detective novels again." She smiled. "Possibly." He didn't smile back. "Let's get him moved," Slack ordered. The constable fetched a stretcher from the ambulance cart. People watched from the edge of the green, whispering. Slack's tone softened slightly as he spoke to Dr. Haydock. "We'll have it confirmed at the post-mortem, but it's simple enough. Overexertion. No mystery," Lady Bantry murmured. "I suppose that's a relief." Marple didn't reply. Her eyes were still on the cup. A single coin lay beside it now, caught in the damp patch, where the tea had dried. The residue on its edge had hardened white, like fine dust. She looked closer but didn't touch. Slack noticed. "See something?" "Just the way it caught the light," she said. He gave her a look of faint impatience. "Best leave the detecting to those paid for it, Miss Marple." She nodded. "Of course." The constable lifted the stretcher. Coins clinked as they shifted the tray. The noise was oddly sharp against the still air. Slack turned to follow. "Paperwork first," he said to the sergeant. Then, to no one in particular, "We'll close the fair early. Keep things tidy." The band started again, half-heartedly in the distance, life resuming too quickly. Marple stood alone by the booth. She looked once more at the teacup, the coin, and the faint trace of white. A breeze passed through, faint but carrying the smell again, sweet, bitter, definite. She whispered to herself. A small thing. Easily missed. Evening settled over Street Mary Mead. The fair was done. Stalls stood empty, half covered in canvas. The smell of rain mixed with sugar and dust. Paper flags hung limp. Footprints marked the damp grass where laughter had been. Miss Marple walked the path alone. No one questioned her. Old ladies in Street Mary Mead were invisible after dark. She carried no lamp, only her handbag. She moved quietly toward Mr. Kenton's booth. The police tape was gone. Slack had finished hours ago. He'd said it was heart failure. Case closed. Marple was not so sure. She paused at the edge of the stall, wood damp beneath her glove. A few coins remained scattered in the grass. She crouched, picked one up. Sticky again. The faint smell of almonds still clung to it. Rain hadn't washed it away. She placed it back exactly where it had been, then lifted the corner of the tablecloth. The cash box sat beneath, open and half empty. Drizzle tapped against the tin lid. Inside were a few coins, a folded paper, and a stub of pencil. Marple slipped on her spectacles. Carefully, she lifted the note. 2 words only, written in strong, slanted hand. Tomorrow payment. No name, no amount. Just that line. She turned it over. Blank. The handwriting looked masculine, deliberate. Mr. Kenton's own, she suspected, but it told her nothing of who the note was meant for. She examined the pencil stub. Freshly sharpened. Marks of pressure near the tip. He'd written quickly, perhaps minutes before he died. The table surface showed no sign of struggle. No overturned box, no broken glass. Everything neat, too neat. Slack would call that efficiency. Marple called it unnatural. She leaned closer to the cash box lid. A faint streak of white near the hinge, same as before. Powder mixed with moisture. She brushed it gently with her glove. It left a smear that dulled in the rain. From the church road came distant voices, the fair workers clearing carts. She stayed still until they faded, then stood and looked around. The whole green was empty. Only the smell of burnt sugar remained. She took the note and slipped it into her handbag. Evidence, though Slack would not call it that. Tomorrow payment. Who owed whom? And why write it now, at the fair, in public? Marple looked once more at the booth. The spilled tea stain still visible on the planks. Rain beaded along the edge and darkened the wood. No birds sang. The silence pressed in. She thought of Mrs. Kenton at home, alone, and of Perkins the baker, red-faced and nervous. Someone had been meant to pay tomorrow, someone who couldn't wait. She closed her handbag slowly, the note safe inside, then turned toward the road. But why? She whispered. Would anyone pay? The dead. Morning came grey and cool. The fair was gone. Only flattened grass and scraps of paper remained. Miss Marple walked toward the village lane, umbrella tapping softly. The smell of wet bread drifted from the bakery nearby. She followed it. Mabel Knox lived above the old sweet shop. She'd run the raffle stall at the fair. Her curtains were open, her cat asleep in the window. When Marple knocked, Mabel opened the door at once. She looked tired, flour still on her sleeves. "Oh, Miss Marple," she said. "Terrible business yesterday." Marple nodded. "Yes, you saw Mr. Kenton last, I think?" Mabel hesitated. "I suppose so. Poor man." She led Marple to the kitchen table. 2 cups, 1 teapot, steam faint in the air. The scent of strong tea filled the room. "Tell me," Marple said gently. "Did you notice anything before it happened?" Mabel sat, her hands twisted in her apron. "There was a quarrel," she said. "Kenton and the baker, Mr. Perkins." Her voice dropped lower. "They were by the coin stalls." Perkins looked ready to strike him. Marple watched her closely. "What about?" "Money. Always money. Perkins owed him. You see." She poured tea for both of them. Her hand shook slightly. Kenton told him, "Plain as you like. You'll regret it by sunset." Marple stirred her cup. "That's quite a phrase." Mabel nodded. "He meant it too. You could tell by his face." She looked toward the window. "Everyone saw. He didn't care who heard." Her voice wavered. "Then later I saw Mrs. Kenton with Perkins, whispering. Before or after the quarrel?" "After. Behind the jam stall." Mabel hesitated. She looked upset. He looked angry. Then they went different ways. Marple's spoon stopped mid-stir. "And did Mr. Kenton see them?" "I think so. He was watching." He smiled. The word smile came out uneasy, almost whispered. Marple leaned back. "So, a husband threatening a debtor, a wife speaking secretly with that same man, and by evening, the husband dead." Mabel swallowed. "It sounds dreadful when you put it like that." "Dreadful," Marple said simply. Outside, a cart rattled by. The smell of fresh bread grew stronger. The clock in the hallway struck 9. Marple finished her tea, left the spoon neatly on the saucer. "Did Mrs. Kenton say anything after the death?" "She told me her husband worked himself to death. Said it often enough to make me believe she was practicing the line." Marple stood. "Thank you, Mabel. You've been most helpful." Mabel followed her to the door. "Will there be an inquest?" "Yes," Marple said. "There will have to be." On the step, she paused. The smell of bread lingered, sweet and warm. It should have been comforting. It wasn't. She looked toward the bakery down the lane. Perkins was outside, wiping his hands, avoiding her gaze. Mrs. Kenton's curtains were drawn across the street. Too neat, Marple thought. Far too neat. Miss Marple sat by her window that afternoon. Rain tapped against the glass. The garden below looked washed and pale. Steam rose from her teacup, faint but familiar. She watched it curl, thinking of another cup, the one from yesterday. She opened her small notebook, a few lines already written. Smell of almonds, residue on rim, sticky coins, folded note, each detail in neat order. She underlined the last one. Tomorrow payment, a simple phrase, but it changed everything. She thought of Mr. Kenton first. Moneylender. Methodical. He'd have written that note to someone in debt. Someone meeting him that very day. And whoever it was had paid early, just not with money. She turned a page, wrote the next word slowly. Poison. It fit the facts. Smell. Residue. Sudden death. Quick. Clean. Cyanide, most likely. Then she wrote, Tea. The vehicle. Always the simplest thing. She pictured the scene again. Kenton behind the stall, the cup beside him, his wife bringing it. People watching. Nothing hidden, nothing strange, except the result. He died. And yet Mrs. Kenton was the one who poured the tea. Had she poisoned her husband in front of half the village? That seemed careless, too open, too sure. Marple traced the page with her pencil tip. Maybe the tea wasn't for him. Maybe it was for someone else. Someone she wished harm to. A debtor. A man who had quarreled with Kenton that same morning. She turned the page again. Wrote, Perkins. The baker. Angry. Owed money. Seen whispering with Mrs. Kenton. Could they have planned something together? If so, which of them prepared the tea? She rubbed her temple. If Mrs. Kenton poured it. She must have known what was in it. If Perkins was meant to drink it, he must have trusted her. And if Kenton drank by mistake, yes, that would explain the look on his face. Surprise, not pain. Marple took a slow breath. The air in her cottage smelled of damp wool and tea leaves. She liked the contrast. Life continuing while logic sharpened quietly. She made a list. Clues: smell of almonds, white residue on cup, sticky coins, folded note, wife brought tea, baker quarreled, same two seen whispering later. Each piece fit, but not cleanly. One turn was missing. Who drank what, and why? Marple leaned back, folded her hands. If the poison was meant for someone else, everything changed. Mrs. Kenton would be guilty still of intent, not result. And Perkins would be silent out of fear or shame. Outside, a bird landed on the fence, pecked once, then flew off. The smallest motion broke her thought, but not her conclusion. She looked down at her notes once more, her handwriting neat as ever. Under T, she added one final line. Unless, she murmured, the wrong cup was meant. The rain had stopped by morning. The village was quiet again. Miss Marple sat with Lady Bantry in the drawing-room. A fire burned low, and the faint scent of coal drifted through the air. On the small table between them lay a sheet of paper and 2 pencils. "Let's see if we can untangle this," Marple said. Lady Bantry adjusted her spectacles. "You think there's more to it, Jane?" Marple smiled slightly. "There always is." She drew a line down the middle of the paper. "Time," she said. "Left column for facts, right for questions." Lady Bantry poured tea into 2 cups. The sound was steady, comforting, but Marple's tone stayed practical. "Now, when did Mrs. Kenton bring her husband's tea?" Lady Bantry thought a moment. 11:15. She came from the church lane. Marple nodded and wrote, 10:45. Mrs. Kenton brings tea. She stayed a moment, didn't she? Yes, Lady Bantry said. She spoke with him, smiled, and left. Quite ordinary. Marple's pencil paused. Did she pour it herself? I believe so. She took the lid off the flask, poured 2 cups. Marple looked up. 2? Yes, said Lady Bantry. 1 for him, 1 for someone else, I assumed. But now, she trailed off. Marple added the next entry. 10:50. Perkins visits stall. He'd quarrelled with Kenton earlier, she said quietly. Lady Bantry sighed. He did look rather flushed. He leaned close, spoke low. Kenton waved him off. And then he left, muttering, Mrs. Kenton was gone by then. Marple underlined the next time. 11. Kenton drinks. Several people saw him lift the cup, she said. Lady Bantry nodded. Yes. He laughed at something Mabel Knox said. Then he drank. Marple wrote. Drank once. Set down cup. Reached for coin tray. Lady Bantry's face grew serious. And at 2 minutes past 11, he fell. Marple noted it down. 11:2. Collapse. The page looked clean, ordered, factual, but something didn't fit. Marple tapped her pencil against the margin. 2 cups, she said again. 1 used, 1 untouched. Lady Bantry frowned. I didn't see a second when Slack arrived. No, Marple agreed. It was gone. They sat in silence for a moment. Only the faint ticking of the mantel clock filled the room. Marple read over the sequence once more. 10:45, 10:50, 11, 11:2. Precise, predictable, deliberate. She set her pencil down. The second cup must have been taken away, she said. Lady Bantry blinked. By whom? Marple didn't answer. She was thinking of Mrs. Kenton again, and of the baker who'd left the fair early, saying he felt unwell. Lady Bantry poured more tea, trying to make sense of it. So the wife brought 2 cups, 1 for him, 1 for another. He drinks, he dies. The other cup disappears. Marple nodded slowly. Precisely. The clock chimed once, sharp and final. Marple looked down at the neat row of times on the page. Then she added 1 last note beneath them. Then who, she said softly, was the second cup for? Miss Marple visited the Kenton house that afternoon. The door opened. Before she could knock twice, Mrs. Kenton stood there. Her eyes were red, but her face calm. She had the kind of control that looked practiced. "Miss Marple," she said softly. "Such kindness of you to come." Marple gave a small nod. "I wanted to see how you were managing." The hallway smelled of polish. Everything gleamed. The furniture looked untouched, the air almost sterile. Too perfect, Marple thought. Grief rarely dusted so well. Mrs. Kenton led her to the sitting room. "Please, do sit." The curtains were half drawn. Light fell in narrow lines across the floor. A tea tray waited on the table, untouched. The pot still warm, but not steaming. Marple sat, hands folded neatly. "You must be very tired," she said. Mrs. Kenton smiled faintly. "Death is tiring, Miss Marple. The things one must say to people." Her tone was dry, almost rehearsed. She poured tea into 2 cups but did not drink. Marple watched her hands. They trembled slightly. The glove cuffs darkened near the seam. Faint grey lines along the edge. Not dirt. Powder of some kind. She noted it without comment. "He had heart trouble," Mrs. Kenton said suddenly. Dr. Haydock knew it. Always warned him about stress. Marple nodded once. "Stress can be dangerous." "Yes," said Mrs. Kenton. "And the fair was dreadful for him. All that sun. All those people." She stirred her tea, though she hadn't added sugar. "He'd been short of breath all week," she continued. Her eyes stayed on the cup. "He was due to rest next month. But he wouldn't. Always working. Always worrying." Marple's gaze moved to the mantelpiece. 2 watches sat there. 1 silver, 1 gold. The gold one had a broken chain. The clasp missing. "You've kept both?" she asked quietly. Mrs. Kenton followed her eyes. "Oh, yes. The silver was his favorite." Her voice caught, only for a second, then steady again. "He bought it himself. Said it was for good luck." Marple leaned slightly forward. "Did he ever speak of money matters recently?" Mrs. Kenton hesitated. "Only the usual. Collections payments." Her tone flattened. "Nothing of importance. Even with Mr. Perkins?" The teacup rattled as it met the saucer. She looked up quickly. "Why would you ask that?" Marple smiled mildly. "I only heard they spoke at the fair." "Then you heard wrong," Mrs. Kenton said. "Too fast. Too firm." Marple waited. No need to press further. The woman's silence filled the space better than questions could. The polished surfaces, the air, even the tea, they all felt prepared, managed, but not truthful. Mrs. Kenton lifted her cup, set it down again, untouched. "I'm sure Inspector Slack has all he needs," she said. "I imagine so," Marple replied. She stood to leave. "Thank you for your time, my dear." Mrs. Kenton followed her to the door, hands clasped too tightly. Outside, the damn air smelled of rain again. Marple paused at the gate. The faint grey smear on Mrs. Kenton's glove lingered in her mind. Not dust, not ash, something chemical. She didn't speak it aloud. She never did. Not yet. She only tucked the thought into memory. She filed it quietly away. The next morning, Miss Marple went to the vicarage. The air smelled faintly of ink and old paper. Reverend Clement sat behind his desk, glasses low on his nose. He looked relieved to see her. "My dear Miss Marple," he said, "I thought you might come." He pushed a heavy book toward her. "The parish accounts. You asked to see them." She nodded. "I did. But I wonder, may I also look at the other ledger?" The Reverend frowned. "Kenton's?" "Yes," she said. "I hear he helped keep several parish loans recorded." He hesitated, then unlocked a drawer. A small brown ledger lay inside. The edges curled, the paper smudged from use. Marple opened it carefully. The writing was neat, methodical. Rows of names, dates, and numbers filled each page. It was Kenton's hand, tight, deliberate, slightly leaning to the right. He'd lent money to half the village. Farmers, shopkeepers, even the church gardener. "Ruinous interest," Clement muttered. "Quite legal, but ruinous." Marple turned another page. Same pattern. Payments marked in tidy columns. Occasional notes in red. Overdue. Final warning. To be collected personally. Then she reached the last used page. Half filled. The pen stroke ended mid-word. She leaned closer. The line read, "Perkins paid in full." But there was no date, no signature. The next line was blank. Then nothing. The ledger ended. Marple traced the ink lightly with one gloved finger. The pressure of the pen had indented the paper. Firm, recent. It had been written not long before his death. "Curious," she said. Reverend Clement nodded. Mr. Perkins swore he hadn't paid a penny in. "Weeks," said Kenton was hounding him again. Marple closed the book slowly. "Did he seem frightened?" "Defensive," said the vicar. "He said Kenton threatened to take the bakery if payment didn't come by Friday." Marple thought of the folded note she'd found beneath the stall. "Tomorrow payment, Friday." It fit perfectly. She turned back a page to check earlier entries. All clean, organized, factual. Only that last line broke the rhythm. She took a small breath. The air in the vicar's study carried the faint scent of polish and candle smoke, the same careful order she'd seen at the Kentons' house. But here, the order made sense. There, it had been forced. Reverend Clement poured tea into 2 cups. "Inspector Slack says it was heart failure. He won't bother with another inquiry." Marple smiled faintly. "Inspector Slack is a man of action, not of patience." She sipped once, then set the cup down. "Tell me, did Kenton ever keep his ledgers elsewhere?" "Not that I know of. He guarded that one like treasure." She stood to leave. "Thank you, Reverend. This has been most enlightening." He followed her to the door, puzzled. "You think Perkins had something to do with it?" Marple didn't answer. She glanced once more at the brown ledger. Its spine was cracked, the edges worn from years of greed. "Mr. Perkins owed him more than money," she said quietly. "Now, it seems, someone's paid the debt." She stepped out into the morning light. The church bells were ringing for noon. Each toll sounded too sharp, too clean. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed slightly. "So," she murmured, "someone had paid for him. Differently." Miss Marple sat in her chair by the window. The day was quiet. Only the faint ticking of the clock filled the room. Outside, a milk cart rattled down the lane. The air smelled faintly of rain and old wood. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she walked, through the fairground in her mind. Every step, every motion. The sequence mattered more than the emotion. She began at the start. Mrs. Kenton arrives at 10:45, carrying a small flask, not from the public urn. Her own, polished, silver, narrow-necked. Marple pictured her hand, unscrewing the lid, pouring tea into 2 cups, one for her husband, one for someone else. The same teapot, 2 cups. That was fact. The question was, when did she add the poison? Before pouring, or after? Marple saw the flask again, the light glinting off the lid. If she'd mixed the poison inside, both cups would have been fatal. But only one man had died, so it couldn't have been in the flask. It had been added later. She imagined the table, wooden, uneven, littered with coins, the 2 cups side by side, Kenton's hand reaching for one, Mrs. Kenton leaning forward, pretending to tidy the tray, her wrist turning slightly. A small motion, unseen. Something slipped. In quick, quiet, practiced, Marple opened her eyes. The sound of the clock seemed louder now. The rhythm matched her thoughts. Tick for moment, tock for motive. She moved the picture forward. Kenton lifts the cup, smiles, drinks once, sets it down. Perkins arrives moments later, his hands shaking, his voice low. They argue. Mrs. Kenton gone by then, or standing just far enough away. Marple imagined the second cup again, still full, untouched, perhaps intended for Perkins, perhaps for her husband. A mix-up possible in seconds, 2 cups alike side by side, only one marked by death. She pressed her hand to her temple. No proof yet, only shape. The facts pointed clearly. But the law required more. Slack would laugh without evidence. Mrs. Kenton would deny everything, and Perkins would stay silent out of guilt or fear. She wrote on her notepad, 2 cups, same teapot, poison added after pour. Then another line, tea came from flask, not urn, private. Source, controlled. It was simple in method, clever in timing. The wrong cup taken by chance. Poison, doing what conscience could not. Marple folded her notes, slid them beneath her teacup. She didn't need to see them again tonight. They were already clear in her mind. She could picture the motion now, the turn of the hand, the steady aim, the unthinking reach that sealed it all. Outside, a bell rang somewhere down the lane. Evening approaching again. The kind of hour when truth felt close. She straightened her papers, calm once more. Logic was done. Next came proof. She would need proof. Night fell early over Street Mary Mead. Clouds hung low, and the wind smelled faintly of wet earth. Most windows were dark. Only the vicarage lamp still burned across the green. Miss Marple walked slowly, her shoes quiet on the damp grass. The fairground was empty now. Wooden stalls leaned against one another like tired men. Paper scraps clung to puddles. She carried a small torch in her pocket, the light covered with a handkerchief. Enough to see, not enough to draw notice. She reached Kenton's stall. It looked smaller in the dark. The table still there, the cash-box removed. Rain had dried on the planks in dull streaks. The smell lingered tea and something sharper beneath. She waited a moment, listening. No footsteps, no voices. Then she knelt. Her hand brushed under the edge of the planks. The boards were loose. Something metal clicked faintly when her glove touched it. She lifted the corner carefully. A spoon lay beneath, its handle bent. The bowl of it dull grey, except for one small patch, faint blue, near the rim. She brought it closer to the torchlight. Not rust. Chemical stain. Old laboratory lessons came back to her. Copper reacting with cyanide left that same pale tint. She exhaled slowly. The smell of damp wood and metal mixed together. She placed the spoon into a small paper wrap and tucked it into her bag. Then she searched further under the planks. Her fingers brushed against something soft. She pulled gently. A glove, lady's size, pale grey, the left one, the same shade she had seen on Mrs. Kenton's hands that day. The cuff still showed the faint dark ring where powder had clung. One missing piece returned itself. Marple stood, looking over the empty space. Rain had washed away most traces, but not all. The teacup outline remained on the table's edge like a faint shadow. Beside it, a circle where another cup had once rested, identical, but clean. She closed her eyes for a moment, replaying the motion. Mrs. Kenton leaning in, setting down the cup. The hand brushing too close to the spoon. The quick turn, then the retreat, leaving everything looking right except it wasn't. She opened her eyes again. The logic held perfectly now. Timing, motive, method. Only one thing left the test. She pulled a note card from her handbag and began to write under the weak light of the torch, each letter careful, small, and certain. Inspector Slack, bring chemist first thing, stall plank, spoon, left glove, cyanide confirmed. She folded the note neatly, slipped it into an envelope, and sealed it with a pin from her sleeve. Then she looked around once more. The night had grown colder, the fairground utterly still. She tucked the glove and the paper wrap deeper into her bag. One last glance at the darkened booth. The proof was there now, waiting for daylight. Miss Marple turned toward the road. Her breath misted in the air, faint and even. She walked slowly back toward her cottage, steps soundless on the wet grass. Tomorrow, she murmured to herself, truth will open. Morning broke still and pale. The air smelled faintly of polish and cold tea. Inspector Slack stood by the hearth, arms crossed. Mrs. Kenton sat in the chair opposite, her gloves folded neatly in her lap. Perkins stood by the window, face drawn. Lady Bantry watched, from the side, silent. Miss Marple entered quietly, a small envelope in her hand. She placed it on the table. Inside lay the spoon and the grey glove. Slack spoke first. "Well, Miss Marple, you've called us all here. I hope it's not for gossip." She smiled faintly. "No, Inspector. For logic," Slack grunted. "Then let's have it." Marple looked from one face to another. "The chemist tested the spoon," she said. "Cyanide, enough to kill twice over." Mrs. Kenton's fingers tightened slightly. Perkins took a step back. Slack's eyes narrowed. "Go on," The poison, Marple continued, was added after pouring. 2 cups of tea, same pot, same flask. But one touched the poisoned spoon. She turned to Mrs. Kenton. You brought the tea from home, didn't you? Mrs. Kenton nodded once. Yes. He preferred mine. Marple's tone stayed even. You poured 2 cups at the fair, one for him, one for another. Mrs. Kenton looked up sharply. That's not true, Marple continued, as if she hadn't spoken. Mr. Perkins, you were the other. You'd quarreled with him. He summoned you back for payment. Perkins swallowed. He said it was urgent. Marple nodded. Yes, and Mrs. Kenton planned to meet you there. You thought it was reconciliation. She thought it was revenge. Mrs. Kenton stood. That's a lie. Slack raised a hand. Sit down, madam. Marple went on, calm and steady. She poured both cups. Then when your husband looked away, she stirred one with the poisoned spoon. The other remained clean. But when Perkins arrived, the positions shifted. Kenton moved the cups himself. He took the wrong one. Lady Bantry gasped softly. Perkins pressed a hand to his mouth. Mrs. Kenton's voice trembled. He was cruel. You don't understand. He'd have ruined us all. Marple nodded gently. I do understand. But murder seldom chooses its target. Carefully. He drank what was meant for another. Slack opened the envelope. The glove and spoon glinted faintly under the light. The chemist confirmed it? Yes, said Marple. The powder on the cuff matched the residue on the spoon. Same composition, same source. Cyanide from cleaning salts, easily obtained, fatally used. Mrs. Kenton sank back into the chair. The sound of the clock filled the silence. Perkins turned toward the window, his face white. Lady Bantry whispered, She didn't mean him. No, said Marple softly, but poison doesn't care for intention. Slack closed his notebook. That's enough for me. He nodded to the constable waiting by the door. Mrs. Kenton didn't resist. Only once did she look at Miss Marple, anger mixed with relief, as if truth had taken the burden for her. The room stayed quiet after they left. Only the faint smell of polish and tea remained. Marple looked at the empty cups on the tray. 2, again. Identical, deceptively harmless. She turned toward Lady Bantry. Poison, she said quietly, always finds its rightful cup. Afternoon settled over Street Mary Mead. The storm of the morning had passed. The lanes were quiet again. Inside Gossington Hall, the kettle hissed softly. The faint scent of bergamot filled the air. Lady Bantry poured the tea with steady hands. No hurry. No sound except the small clink of porcelain. Miss Marple sat opposite, her knitting folded beside her cup. Neither woman spoke for a moment. Well, Lady Bantry said at last, it's all rather dreadful, isn't it? Marple nodded. Yes, but dreadful things often grow from very small roots. She lifted her cup. The steam curled gently, rising like thought itself. Lady Bantry sighed. I never liked the man, but still his wife. To do such a thing. Marple's voice was soft. She didn't mean it for him. That's what makes it tragic. Bantry stirred her. Tea once. It was the debt, wasn't it? Yes, said Marple. It usually is. Money twists more hearts than we care to admit. The clock ticked on the mantel. Somewhere in the garden, a bird called. The house felt heavier than before, but calm. Lady Bantry stared into her cup. I wonder if she ever loved him. Marple considered it. Perhaps, once, but debt and fear make poor companions for love. She reached for the teapot again, refilled both cups. The scent deepened, warm, steady, familiar. Debt binds people, she said quietly. Not by choice, but by weight. It can hold tighter than affection ever will. Lady Bantry nodded slowly. You mean she stayed out of duty? Marple shook her head. Not duty. Desperation. And desperation always finds a crack in reason. They drank in silence for a while. The rhythm of the clock joined the faint hum of the kettle cooling. Peace, but not comfort. Lady Bantry leaned back. You do make it sound almost merciful, Jane. Marple smiled faintly. Not merciful, just human. She set her cup down with care. Most evils come from hearts that once meant well. Outside, the sky lightened behind the trees. The rain had left a smell of damp leaves and earth. It drifted in through the open window. Marple breathed it in, quiet. Lady Bantry broke the silence again. Inspector Slack said you'd solved it before breakfast. Marple shook her head. No, I only watched what everyone else ignored. Small things tell the whole story if you let them. She picked up her knitting again. Her fingers moved without looking. The motion simple, calm, certain. Lady Bantry smiled a little. You always make sense of chaos, Marple replied softly. It isn't sense, my dear. It's patience. The fire gave one last crack before settling to embers. Lady Bantry lifted her cup once more. Marple followed, eyes thoughtful, voice low. Debt, she said, binds more hearts than love ever did. The steam rose once more between them, faint and warm. Then she added, almost to herself, truth cools slower than tea. Davis's voice returned, calm and familiar. The sound of the kettle in the background. Steam, soft and steady. As always, dear friends, he said. Could you have guessed before Miss Marple did? He paused. You had 3 clues all along. The smell, the glove, the ledger. Each one simple, each one enough. The smell, he continued, wasn't sugar or soap, it was almonds. The faint warning that death had passed too close. A quiet click, like a cup meeting its saucer. The glove, he said next, told its own story. Powder on the cuff, not dust, not flour, proof hidden in plain sight. A breath, then the last reminder. The ledger. Every secret begins on paper, doesn't it? Numbers that show who owed and who couldn't bear to owe again. He let the thought rest. No rush. Only the hum of the kettle filling the space between words. Tell us, he said softly. Which clue gave it away for you? Was it the smell, the glove, or the ledger? He smiled in his tone. I read every answer. The sound of pouring tea returned slow, measured, certain. And tomorrow, Davis said, another kettle will boil, and another quiet crime will whisper through Street Mary Mead. The steam faded. The room grew still. Only the echo of his last word lingered, whisper. The room stayed quiet. Only the faint clink of a cooling cup. Davis's voice dropped to a whisper. Next time, he said, a letter with no name, and a wedding that never happens. His tone softened, deliberate. You'll hear it first, here in Street Mary Mead. A pause followed. The kettle sighed faintly in the background, warmth fading, expectation rising. Secrets travel faster than vows, he added, and this one arrives by post. He let the silence settle again. Just the hum of air, the rustle of paper, a distant ticking clock. I'll be waiting, he said at last. Same hour, same tea. The sound of a teacup lifted, steam whispered once more. Then the voice, low and final, don't miss it. The mysterious death on market day. A Miss Marple mystery. Davis's voice lingered, calm and certain. Subscribe, he said softly. Share your theory, and keep your kettle warm. A faint clink of china, a soft breath of steam, the closing rhythm familiar now. In Street Mary Mead, he whispered. Nothing stays hidden for long. The sound faded, kettle cooling, truth resting until only silence remained.